Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dolls of Our Lives. That's right, if you've not seen our social media, we've decided to rebrand as we approach our 100th episode. This is lucky episode 99. We're so excited to get to 100, and thanks to every single listener who helped us get here. We're so excited to take you with us into this new era. We're also so thankful to listeners who suggested this name, which is also the name of our book coming out in fall 2023. The book will be called Dolls of Our Lives: Why We Can't Quit American Girl. At the end of the show, I'll share our new social handles, but we'd appreciate your help and support in spreading the word. Thanks to everyone who continues to support our show and this community. We've got a new name and logo, but we're the same show. We're really excited about this change and the parts of our show that don't change, like the fact that we're reliving the American Girl series book by book. So even though this is a happy announcement, I will be throwing it to a long dead singer who is about to bum us all out with a historically appropriate hit song. Bing, take it away.
Why should I be standing in line, just waiting for bread? Once I built a railroad, I made it run, made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dolls of Our Lives. This is the show where we're reliving the American Girl series book by book. I'm Mary.
I'm Bing Crosby. Wait, no, I'm still Allison.
Wow, and we just heard some of Bing Crosby's Brother, Can I Spare a Dime? It's actually a relief you're not Bing Crosby because I got weirdly invested once into learning about his life. Have you ever gone on that journey?
I have not, but this just brought back a visceral memory of one of our beloved professors who would refer to searching the internet as using the Bing because he was not an adopter of Google.
He was brave. You know what? This was the same guy who turned off John Adams when he saw the belt buckles were wrong for the period. And I respect that, and his wife, a fellow PhD professor. But giving credit where it's due, but Bing Crosby was kind of not great, Allison, and that was a rough thing for me to learn as a person whose favorite Christmas movie is White Christmas. But I mean, truly, I just watched that for Rosemary Clooney. I'm a huge Rosemary Clooney fan. But he had one marriage, and then he had a second marriage, and he had kids in both marriages. And in the first marriage, he had 4 sons. He gave them trust funds that they could not cash in until they turned 80.
Whoa. Okay, so he's learning perhaps different lessons or same lessons as some people in the Kit Kittredge universe.
Yes.
I am always fascinated. So he was really, really hot in 1932, which is where her journey starts. I'm always curious about people who do very well during the Depression. And I remember that it was always a thing for things like history fair. Someone would always do the circus in the 1930s. They were like, what you haven't considered is that the circus was popping in the 1930s. People were sad. The circus was not.
I don't know if that's what I would have turned to myself. Do you find joy from the circus?
I really enjoy a circus. I really enjoy a fair. I have had a good time at the circus. I'm going to be real. And it was a dream of my life to visit the Ringling Museum in Florida and to see their circus model collection, to see their art collection. And that's a dream I have checked off twice.
Wow.
Okay. So you asked me what's going on with you pop culture, and I have different answers of things that I'm watching. I liked Do Revenge. I forgot my big headline, which is I became a notary public this week.
What? You did?
I did. As part of
Can I ask what inspired this? What's happening?
When a young gal of the age of 34 and 364 days is deciding how to spend her last day of 34thdom, I feel like the only answer is to go to a notary, do your notarial oath, get everything set up. Like now I'm equipped to get my stamp. They've processed my payment. So I'm like ready and avail. Like I do kind of think I'm internalizing some things from Kit already, like nonstop hustle culture. Like what can I do to make an extra, like $10 here and there, become a notary?
Is that what? Okay, I have like 100 questions. Like, what inspired you to do this? What's involved in becoming a notary? Like, do you have to take a class, or is it literally like, here's my check, I'm ready to take an oath, give me the stamp?
It's somewhere between those. So you have to take an online quiz, but it's honor system. And in my case, I had to go to another notary, take an oath. I plan on getting the full manual and like taking notes because I want to take my duties seriously. There's different range of tasks that you can take on, but I've had experiences with notaries that have been extremely positive, and it led me to want to be one myself so I can give other people positive notary experiences. Because it's like, think of like what leads you to need a notary. It's never great. You're never like, wow, everything in my life is like going really amazing. I have no bureaucratic hiccups. It's like I have this annoying task or difficult task, and there's a notary like an angel with a stamp. And maybe you hand them $20 and maybe you don't. Like, I'm not even sure I'm going to charge. But I noticed that there was a dearth of recognizable notaries in my area. And I was like, this is something that I can do.
You stepped into that industry. Wow. Yeah. Like Kit's dad almost should have pursued that. You would wonder. Wow. I mean, do you feel different now that you're a notary? Have you performed the act? Like, have you notarized anything?
I'm not remotely ready. Like, I have a 4-year commish. I have 4 years to kind of work this out. It's like a presidential term. Like, you don't just run headlong into it. I do feel like
it's not for life. You have to keep re-upping it.
No, and nor should it be. It's like, this should be something that you're constantly keeping up with. Like, I don't feel like I have all the knowledge that I should have yet to perform the full duties. Like, I have done the bare minimum to get me to my place, to get my stamp. The woman who did my oath with me was like, hot tip, like get one that doesn't have, 2 spaces for the end of the years and you can keep it longer. I was like, wow, great tip. Like, notaries helping notaries, so I mean, maybe that's my next venture. I don't know, but I do feel like, if we're going to be spending these next 3 months in the Great Depression, it's like we might see a lot of problematic views on how to survive a depression or a recession. We may learn something useful. I don't know that Kit has. I don't know that we will.
You should make a poster that's like, brother, do you need a notary?
Yeah.
And then it's a picture of you with your stamp.
Or sister, or anybody.
It's a very niche ad. Like, you'd have to know our show and your qualifications, but I feel like there is an audience out there. I mean, I can't tell you what needs to be notarized because I guess I haven't like achieved enough adult things, but I'm sure maybe there's some good times. I don't know, like what's in the game. I hope it's not a true circus for you, but
it sneaks up on
I'm,
you.
Stunned.
Like, the need for a notary is not something that you expect, which is why it's such a valuable asset to our society. That's my opinion. Like, you've been a notary for like less than a week, 2 weeks, and you're already like 110 into this. Yeah, I mean, I like to believe that if any of us, if given the opportunity, would become a notary, like to take on the duties of the office.
Okay.
So I have my certificate. I have all my stuff.
That's impressive. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I don't know what the appropriate thing to say is when someone becomes a notary, but did you listen to like Notorious or anything like that where you're like, it hits different now?
No, but I did spend a lot of time reading through the basic manual and being like, am I ready? Like, could I ever be ready? Like thinking about the Allison I was and the Mary you were when these books came out. It's like we were looking at the beef between NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. The .com bubble was just happening. We didn't know what that meant. Here we are 22 years later, and we're prepared for this.
Yeah. I mean, you're a notary. I don't really have like a skill that I can offer society in that way. Like, I'm not prepared to perform state duties, but I'm here. I'm encouraging of it. Like, I feel like, wow, world's your oyster, I guess. Like, this is wild.
I met a woman this weekend at my job, and she had on a polo and was like clearly in town for a conference. And she was like, yeah, I'm an actuary. And I do believe, like, I think something powerful and beautiful is like, bring that energy to anything you do. Like, part of this story we read for today is Kit trying to get out of like basic tasks that she's been assigned to for want of doing other things. I respected the heck out of that woman being like, yeah, I'm here for a gathering of actuaries.
She just loves it. I mean, it's like finding, joy in small things. Like, what's that Mary Oliver line? Like, what you should do in life is just prepare to feel joy and be amazed all the time. It's like, that's what you should seek out. And it's like, hey, if you find that being an actuary, hanging with other actuaries, like, that's cool. Like, did I start crying this week when Anna showed me like a clip of the Mariners winning a game to be in the playoffs for the first time in 21 years? Yeah. Am I invested in that? Not at all. But I was like, you know what? I'm so happy for you. Like, Anna's a lifelong Mariners fan for no reason. We're from Connecticut, but there was all these amazing tweets where people were like trolling them, and I kind of felt bad where they were like, the last time they were in the playoffs, like there were over 5,000 Blockbuster locations in operation in the US because it was like 2001, and now it's like, obviously I think there's like one in Alaska maybe or something, but people find joy in whatever, and it's like, that's great, that's beautiful.
Kit did that. The world is folding back on itself.
She did that. And I do have a theory about Kit that I'll get into later that did bring me joy to imagine. That's sort of like a headcanon fanfic I'm writing for myself. But you shared with me, like, or you brought up like songs that came out in 2000 when this book did. And I'm staring at this list and it's like, I am going back in time, and it's like, it wasn't a simpler time. And the music was certainly not, better or worse, but it's like, this was our time. Like, I look at all these hit songs, top songs of that year, and it's like, how do you improve on this? I don't know. Oops, I did it again. I mean, if you don't have a play in the middle of your song where you're referencing the movie Titanic for kind of no reason, like, I can't help you. If you don't understand why that's powerful, I can't, like, hit pause on this show.
So, I mean, multiple strands of music were literally different in that era because in the next 2 years, obviously, country music is going to change drastically, right? Like the infusion of like patriotic music in a very specific kind of way. But it's like D'Angelo is on here, Everclear, Three Doors Down, like things that we haven't necessarily thought of.
Pink was still in her hip hop moment.
Yeah.
Most girls, like anyone, Save the Last Dance. Thank you. I Hope You Dance came out that year, Leanne Womack, and it's like, I didn't know and she didn't know in 2000 that I would somewhat inaccurately quote that song for many years to come, including today. Just proud of her. I wonder what she's doing. Hope she's okay. Also, just like R.I.P. Loretta Lynn died today, the day we're recording.
Yes, she did.
Thinking about her, love Coal Miner's Daughter. That would be a great Patreon sometime. But also, Who Let the Dogs Out came out that year, Allison, and I don't remember that song, but I do remember that for some reason, the Baha Men were convinced we were talking about the Disney Channel and stuff off air and that era, they were convinced to do a re-record of that song, and they changed the title to Who Let Snow White Out. It is the most unhinged 3 minutes if you need to take yourself on a ride. It makes no sense. They name check all the dwarfs. It's so much. And I'm like, you guys just didn't care. Like, I don't know what the check was from Disney, but it was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't care.
So we queried aloud last week, why weren't we into Kit Kittredge when she came out? And now I think I have the answer, which is in the year that these books were like being put on shelves for the first time, Disney Channel gave us The Color of Friendship, Rip Girls, Ooh. Miracle in Lane 2, Stepsister from Planet Weird, and my probably
Classic.
Personal favorite. Now keep in mind, Xenon was not out yet. That's 2001. Probably my personal favorite film, and there's a very similar novel. That summer, they released Quince, and I loved that film.
That was a great one. That was a good one.
Loved that. And that book, and a book of a similar nature, gave me this irrational fear that a group of multiples would be thrust upon my family. I never had a sense of like why this would occur, but this was a trope for girls our age that like your parents, just as you're entering your adolescence, are going to surprise you and bring home multiples. And like
It's not
There
a good
was
surprise.
like no way that could have happened in my family, and yet this planted a seed where it's like, but what if I became big sister to Quince? What if? Plus the John and Kate of it all.
Whoa.
You know, like the world was different.
Yeah,
We didn't know.
We were invested in that for different reasons. And you know, also just thinking about like, yeah, it is interesting that we were interested in like multiples, like our culture was with Johnny Kate plus 8, and we're still doing that, I guess. TLC haven't dropped down on their program because it's too bleak for me sometimes. Like I did catch some of Sister Wives and I'm like, that's too dark for this program. I can't speak on that right now. Like what is happening in that family is insane. But you know, I'm glad that some things from 2000 like are still with us. Like some of these groups are still touring. Backstreet Boys, Bow Wow is still out there. He's never forget his iconic moment when he tweeted he was on a private jet and someone sitting behind him on Delta was like, this dude's sitting ahead of me on Delta, and he had to like walk that back. That was rough, but he's still doing it. But Lindsay Lohan announced she's doing a Christmas movie on Netflix. You know what? She never really faded away, and she's making yet another comeback. I'm happy for her.
Well, while we're talking about her, you know, obviously we have mentioned before that we find a lot of like important overlap between like visuals and iconography in Molly and Britney Spears. The fact that this song was like released at the same time as this book, how much is this Kit coming to learn her family's true situation? How was I supposed to know that something wasn't right here? And then Kit is still trying to grapple with like capitalism versus something else. She's like, I still believe, but I think we're gonna get there. I think we're gonna get there.
Well, it's also like even that Titanic sketch when she refers to the old lady dropping the jewelry and the necklace in the ocean during Titanic. It's like maybe that was Kit, and it was like a metaphor. Like she had this life of affluence and she had no idea, and it slipped through her fingers. And now we're here in the Depression, and Bing Crosby nor anyone else is going to give her or Dad a dime. That's where we're at.
I do feel like Bing Crosby wrote that song and profited off of it so that men born around the time of this book could walk around with tiny mics and ask people inane questions and say, would you rather have $10 or give the next person $20?
No, thank you. No.
Okay, we're going to get into Kit Kittredge. I'm ready. Kit learns a lesson. Did we? We'll never answer.
You never underestimate Val Tripp.
No.
Perennial lesson. Let's do it.
Okay, so I found what I'm going to describe as an amusing summary, and then I'm going to read a real one. I just love this. In Kit Learns a Lesson, her older brother gets a job rather than attend college, and Kit helps her mother clean. Additional boarders have moved in, and there is more work than ever. When a classmate's taunts lead to an altercation, Sterling, Kit, and her best friend, Ruthie, parentheses, are punished. That's like not a great description of this book, but
No.
I found it funny and I wanted to share it. So I'm going to go with the description they use on like the second edition of these books. Kit hopes Dad will find a new job soon. Then things in the Kittredge household can go back to the way they were before Dad lost his business in the Depression. Kit won't have to get up early every morning before school to do chores for bothersome boarders, the people who pay to live in the Kittredge's house, and she will have more time to write her newspapers. But when Kit helps deliver her class's Thanksgiving food basket to a soup kitchen, she learns a surprising lesson about being thankful. Is that what you think happens in this book?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. That was a really weird. All of these summaries are weird. Like the one from Kit Book 1, this one. I mean, honestly, I'm noticing that Britney Spears Lucky also came out in 2000. Like they should have just put the lyrics to that as the summary of this book. I mean, it's as close as anything else you've read. Honestly, it's like, I don't know. Before we go on into the book, and I do want to get into it, I just have been thinking a lot about her typewriter. And the fact that it's like the typewriter has to go in the closet and then come out, and it's like, okay, what's going on with that? But keeping in mind, like, let's say she has this typewriter, she keeps it through life. Allison, are you open to believing a possible fanfic in which she moves from her beloved Ohio to Cabot Cove, Maine, and by her retirement is casually writing mysteries? Her husband's dead, and she changes her name to Jessica Fletcher. Your thoughts?
Dead in quotes and yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about it and I was like, she does bring Jessica Fletcher energy as a child. The timing is right.
So I think something that is very interesting, and obviously like people who love Kit love her very deeply, and it has been awesome to see people responding to us getting to Kit, you know, like finally for some people. What is also kind of, you know, sticking in the back of my mind, a message we'd gotten weeks ago before we started Kit was someone saying, you know, there are a lot of sort of corrosive or not super positive ideas that are kind of embedded in this book. And I think that there is an overlap between Molly Learns a Lesson, Felicity Learns a Lesson, and this book, which is young girls being taught to kind of like hustle and enable a family to get through a crisis in like a very, very specific way. And I'm bringing this up because I see someone in Kit who never stops working, who no matter how old she is, how much she's accumulated, is never able to enjoy money again, is never able to enjoy comfort again. And someone who ends up with a really complicated and possibly toxic set of ideas about work. And I think we can get into that more. But I think part of what's strange about that description is I don't think that this is a book about a young girl learning to be grateful. I think this is a very actually sharp and smart book about a girl finally coming to an awareness over a 3-month window that things are bad. Things are going to get worse, and that things have changed. And I think that's something Valerie Tripp does very well in her second books. The girls start to really understand that life is not going back to how it was. It's not just one bad meal of turnips. It's not just one tea party that's bad. It's not just one breakfast that kind of sucks. Like, life is different now. And I think she drops that hammer book 2 every time.
I think that's definitely true. I mean, I liked the part of this book where we see kind of like what feels like a very accurate way that a child would process figuring out this truth about her dad and then this like bigger truth about herself and her family. I don't really like that. I'm just going to put this out there. Is Val a Republican?
I don't know.
Let me explain.
I think quite the opposite, actually.
Well, I mean, what you get in this book is like actually messaging that, you know, through Ruthie, who likes fairy tales, there's like constant messaging that like you have to work really hard to deserve help. And instead of like everyone deserves help, point blank, period, to quote Hailey Bieber on Call Your Daddy, which I didn't listen to but heard referred to, and now I feel cool or not. But you know, it's like I think that there's some messaging here that's like we're seeing, and we can talk about this, like how like private aid organizations were responsible for a lot of aid at this point in the Depression and earlier. And we see the dad and the whole family like benefiting from that. But Ruthie, I think, offers like some really not helpful like messaging drawing from fairy tales, which might be purposeful about how fairy tales, you know, not necessarily offer the best like storylines necessarily for women in particular. But the fact there's a point in the book when she's like, you have to work to deserve a wish to come true.
Yes.
Because she keeps like referring to like a wish coming true. Like Kit has a wish that her dad will get a job and everything will be okay. And then she's worried that she wasn't specific enough in the wish. And on page 17, Ruthie says, you usually have to work hard to deserve a wish to come true. You have to do something brave or impossible or make a giant noble sacrifice. And you have to wait. Wishes take time. And, you know, that's very childlike. And she's obviously like drawing on her very like sincere love of fairy tales. But I kind of feel like as an adult reading this book, it's like there's never a moment in the book when somebody is like, yeah, that's good about fairy tales. And in real life, everyone deserves help. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no adult who enters the chat to be like, not saying don't read fairy tales, just saying maybe also think about this idea with fairy tales. Like everyone deserves help, period. It's not just about who's deserving and who's not, because to me that screams like 90s. You have to work to get welfare instead of like everyone deserving it.
Which I think is very much an idea of 90s neoliberalism. Like I think if this is a book about anything, it's very much like a Clintonian liberalism that in some ways even spills over into the Bush administration in 2000 for a period of time. But I think this is very much like, I kept thinking, as this book is coming out, there is the ongoing, like, protracted difficulty over whether Al Gore won the election or George W. Bush won the election, right? So this is written in a time where it was very much like it's a new millennium, like the soul of the country is at stake. The fact that a president is invoked in such a very specific way, and it's FDR, I think this is very much a defense of a certain kind of democratic thinking, like capital D, from the 90s, like trying to usher into the early 2000s. Like, what works is a notion of a, quote, deserving poor getting temporary support. And there's an interesting thing in the Kit's World book and other books that I kind of picked up about the Depression for kids, where Herbert Hoover is painted as like evil cartoon, like, bad person who doesn't get it, who doesn't get that the government is supposed to intervene in business. And I think you can make an argument that one of our struggles over the past century is the government intervenes in business all the time to the benefit of business only, right?
Right.
And so even in this book, it's like the way that FDR intervenes in the economic world is not a universally beneficial thing. And I don't know that that was being put out there. Well, I know it's not because it's not in these books in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Like, I hear your point about the 90s neoliberalism, and I just think it's definitely presumes the Republican approach or more conservative approach. And I hate that that's in the mouth of like a child character in this book. Like, it really bummed me out. But I mean, we can get into that. Like, there's other stuff with Ruthie and every time I say Ruthie, by the way, I keep thinking about the character in Seventh Heaven, which is like my own hang up. I don't know if that keeps happening for you, but there's a lot in this book. So we can kind of go back because we jumped in sort of like not midway, but this book opens with like Kit in the attic, and it's November and it's cold, and her brother wakes her up for school, and he's going to pack trucks or something, whatever job he has now. And it's like, the attic in November, it's bleak. It's starting to get a little cold in there. It's not insulated. And then we kind of like go through a typical morning in her new normal with all these boarders underfoot, and she does not like that it's now a boarding house.
No, we're also treated to what I think of as like a very elaborate Kit at ASMR, which is like we get this like oral description of, we have this like plinking of the rain coming in through the roof, and then we have like over and over this like click clack of her making noise with the typewriter. And I do think it's interesting that as the family is taking on more and more people to live there, they don't seem to be making a lot of noise. Like, her oral world is still very much like noises that affect her or noises that she makes. And I think it's very much like a way that Valerie Tripp like pulls you into a 9-year-old's POV, that even when she's like goofing around and using like a family member's socks to dust the floor, you're with her only. Like, I think this is why Molly was such a draw to me. Like, you are with this girl and you are getting her subjectivity almost to like an exclusive degree. Like, you feel her experience. And I think that you're right that the typewriter is extremely important. And we also learn later in the book why it was moved. It's not for the reason that Kit thinks it is. But Kit, since August, it's now November, FDR has been elected. She's lost something she loved, which was being able to update her father through a newspaper. And I like that in this book, like, two things happen. There's a bit about like penmanship and like the importance of like her schoolwork. And there's also a moment where we get Kit finding a new way to make news in the family. And I thought that was actually very cool. I thought that was really smart and a way to highlight the creativity of children that is like so raw at that age.
Yeah, I like that too, even when she's reimagining the sounds of the borders into like more interesting kinds of sounds or comparisons. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I remember thinking like, this is really clever to show how imaginative kids are. Mm-hmm. And like her creativity, she's still writing, like rewriting the present in her own head as it's happening. Like, no, that's not Mr. So-and-so. That's, I forget the example, but it's sort of like a way also for her to self-soothe. Like she's kind of moving through her day. She's really probably stressed out and disappointed about this situation, but she's kind of making light of her reality through these kind of creative exercises. And I love too so she goes downstairs after that iconic dusting scene of like putting her dad's socks on over her shoes and like going down the hallway that way. And I'm like, wow, should I be doing that? Should I be adopting that practice in my own life? I don't know. Maybe?
No.
Okay. I mean, I'll take that feedback. But doesn't seem super effective. It does feel fun. She gets downstairs and the mom is making breakfast and she's like, you need to help me. Breakfast on deck is oatmeal with a canned peach on top for all the boarders. Would you eat that breakfast, Allison?
It is much better than what I eat at present. So yes.
What is your breakfast these days?
I'm gonna plead the fifth. No.
Okay.
I buy croissants a lot.
Croissants are way better. What are you talking about?
Well, it's that or nothing. And I'm usually eating the croissant at like 10 or 11 in the morning at work under a bit of like chaos. I was struck by the mother's need to have everything still look really good. And I think that's going to be a through line. And Kit is learning that they're trying to get even more people. And Kit's sort of agitated by that. But the mother has set up like a pretty formal looking dining experience. And I think there's an element of this coming through, which is the family doesn't want to have anyone bored. They want working people. They want people who will pay, including the Howards very soon. But this kind of like pressure to still maintain like the trappings of middle class as much as possible. Yeah. And something that would be cool would be her mentioning like she kind of just seems to know these tricks, and it would be fascinating to have down the line. Is that because when she was younger there wasn't as much money, or is that because she's listening to a radio program or reading newspaper articles that teach her these tricks to make it look like there's more food than there is? Instead, we kind of get it that she just intuitively knows how to do this, when honestly, in that era, that was a huge thing, right? Like how to keep up appearances. Right. She probably got taught that somewhere. But I thought that whole scene was really fascinating because it looked almost like a nice B&B.
Yeah, I thought the thriftiness of that scene, like you're supposed to see how much the mom has leaned into this like new normal, and there would probably have been like things where she could have picked up those kinds of skills. And I thought the emphasis on appearances was really interesting, and we can kind of like keep referring to this, but the focus on like the visual culture of what the Great Depression looks like and like keeping up appearances for other people in your community, like as we'll see, like becomes important. I thought that breakfast sounded good to me. I eat oatmeal every morning usually, or cereal, but so I was like, good on you, Mom, that's great. But I thought like it was interesting that there's no discussion about Kit playing a really central role in this. And you see kind of Kit resenting having to labor. So it's sort of like she's mourning the loss of like a purely leisure-filled childhood, and you kind of see that pivot of seriousness and the whole presentation of the tray, the fact that Kit brings it into the room with all the boarders at the table kind of really symbolizes how important she is to it. And I love that even in that moment, she's looking at all the boarders around the table, including two nurses, and she's imagining like what their lives must be like and wondering, you know, what stories they have to tell. And then she has to stop herself because she doesn't want to include them in her fantasy life because she hates that they're there. And I really love that we get that interiority into her head of how she's even trying to limit her own kind of natural instinct toward creativity to live up to her, you know, predisposition to be against this new normal. Like I felt very real for a child to be like, I'm not even going to give them the benefit of wondering what their lives are like.
Yeah, amazing line on page 11. Kit scolded herself for being curious. Miss Hart and Miss Finney must remain blank pages. And later on, she's sort of like reflecting, they would probably all turn out to be dull anyway, just as disappointing as tidy Mrs. Howard and skinny Sterling. They were not friends. And that changes by the end of the book as she develops a different relationship with Sterling, something that isn't, you know, called out as much as it could be, and not that it needs to be. She's literally serving a classmate who she doesn't really care for, and she thinks of herself as superior to. And we quickly learn that when she is at school, people are speculating about that relationship. And to Kit's credit, Kit does not go out of her way to ever create any kind of like shame for Sterling, but other people are very eager to do that because they know that they are only staying with this family because they don't have other options.
Yeah, and I think that that's what really throws contrast into like the focus on appearances for like the china that the mom serves breakfast in, and the maintaining this whole facade their whole family is doing, as we'll learn, especially the dad. But because when Kit goes to school, every kid there knows everything that has happened in her family. They all know the dad lost his job. One person makes note of the fact that he spent down their savings so he wouldn't have to lay anyone off, and everything knows everything about Sterling's family, and every family in the class that's been affected by what's going on. So it's interesting to think about like Cincinnati as like a big city, or it's like an actual city, but it feels very small because everybody seems to know like all this gossip about everyone else's business.
There's also so many mirrors between this book and both Felicity and Molly, especially Molly, where mothers are expected to like keep up the home at any cost. Like mothers are expected to keep that going and to maintain a standard. And in both of those other contexts where there's a war as opposed to a depression, it's like the father will have to step up and change his life drastically, and that will probably mean leaving. Or in the case of Apprentice Ben, that means him leaving for war. But the idea that the dad would voluntarily leave the family to go to Chicago, that seed gets planted because Sterling actually lies. Sterling has taken the typewriter that Kit uses and written a fake letter from his father and slipped emergency funds into it, pretending that that money has been sent from a job in Chicago. And I kind of love that moment because Sterling has been portrayed in a really negative way, right? Like the fact that he has something that he's struggling with medically, there's like not a lot of positive descriptions of him, right? Like Kit doesn't think highly of him. No one is reaching out to really, well, she's nice to him in book one, but we're not getting a lot of positive descriptions. And he basically tricks everyone at the table into thinking this is real, and tricks his mother into finally paying rent to kind of restore the family pride. I was really happy to see that because I don't think that he's had like a moment yet.
I love that scene because it's so dramatic. Like this is one of possibly the most dramatic breakfast scenes I've ever been a party to, where it's like everyone's at breakfast. First of all, we get Kit saying to herself, his delicate digestion, my eye, because the dad kind of surreptitiously tries to give Sterling his toast, and the Mrs. Howard is like, oh, like, thank you. But he doesn't eat that much. And then it's like, he's eaten everything. So that's like, okay, what's going on with this child? Is he okay? Like, what's going on? The dad is also playing his own mind games because he's like, oh, no, I don't need the toast because I'm going to have a big lunch today when I meet a friend. And it's like, okay, like more on that later. Then this letter arrives and it like sends everyone over the edge. They're like, oh my God, like what is this? And it's from his dad, and it's two $10 bills, as you're saying. And the mom automatically gives one of them to Kit's mom as back rent, basically. And it's like, the machinations that this kid went through to create this moment where he had to pretend to be his own father, and whatever feelings he's feeling about like not actually hearing from his real dad, it's like, this is so much.
And also like just being real, like I think we kind of like threw some appropriate questions at Mrs. Howard. Like, is she for real in this? Like, she doesn't have any more follow-up questions. I think she's in on a performance.
I think she's in on a performance because we learn later that Sterling is like, oh yeah, I've offered her this $20 many times and she's turned me down. Mm-hmm. And then it's like the next day you get a letter in the mail with the same $20 and you're not like, I wonder if this is related to the same 20 that Sterling offered me yesterday. And it's like, probably is, ma'am. Like,
well, we go from this meal to a hotly charged debate in the classroom. Chapter 2 is called Pilgrims and Indians, and it's like, oof, we are going from one fire to another. Like, you think the climax of this book, this is a spoiler for you potentially, we think the climax is Kit discovering that her father is actually struggling and eating one meal a day at the soup kitchen. Wrong. Chapter 2, we have a fight over Indigenous colonial relations that are actually also about like just the arc of American history between Kit and like a bad boy in the classroom. This is his name is Roger. This is a great example of like Valerie is going to Val. Like she's going to give us a boy as a locus of trouble to like target.
This scene jumps right out the window, which is her specialty as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you think you're having like, it starts off where she's introducing her teacher, Mr. Fisher, and you find out that like, she originally thought she was on his bad side because he called on her to read and in class previously, and she had no clue what page they were on because she read ahead to quote, think up better endings to the stories, which is like classic Kit, great. And then it's like, no, we get into this debate about like what was the origin story of Thanksgiving, and what's that kid's name?
Roger.
The twerp kid, Roger. So Roger is like, he puts out his own history point. Like first, he was described as a show-offy boy. And he's like, the first Thanksgiving was in 1621. The Pilgrims invited the Indians to a feast to celebrate their successful harvest. We have turkey at Thanksgiving because the Pilgrims served the Indians 4 wild turkeys. And we call it Thanksgiving because the Indians were thankful to the Pilgrims for being generous and sharing their food.
Yeah, Kit interjects and she says, Roger's got the story backwards. And it's kind of funny that, like, Tripp puts us right into a social studies moment, whereas with Molly, she made her try to endure math. Right? Like,
that was tough for everybody.
We've gotten something kind of different. I will say, if you're looking for a very accessible book that speaks to this, that's very recent, Chris Newell and Winona Nelson's If You Lived During the Plymouth Thanksgiving is like compact, accessible, will give you this history. Kit, in a fascinating turn, says, the Pilgrims would have starved to death if it weren't for the Indians. The Indians taught them to plant corn, on and on. As Kit spoke, she realized that this year, more than ever before, she had tremendous sympathy for the Indians. She knew how it felt to have a bunch of strangers living with you and eating your food and expecting your help when you didn't want them there in the first place. And I was like... And, like, there is a classic American Girl turn where, you're getting some, like, thoughtful engagement with American history. And then Kit is like, but what if colonization was about me?
I get it, what it is to be colonized, even though I'm a colonizer. It's a real wild turn. It took me back to that episode of Saved by the Bell where Zach dresses up like his, air quotes, Indian ancestor.
Yes.
Which is like truly one of the most unhinged episodes of TV I've ever seen in my life. It was a while. It's like, do you think Val in that moment was like, white kids will never understand what we've done to the Indians unless I have them imagine themselves into their head?
So I think something very telling on this same page is when Ruthie says, when hobos come to our back door, my mother always gives them sandwiches and coffee. And I think something that's like a bit odd and goes back and forth in this book is all of the children are then prompted to bring in food for a food drive, which presumes that they have extra food for this and that they themselves are not recipients of any kind of mutual aid or support from the community. And I think that that's something like that in light of their debate over like the Indigenous encounter with the Puritans, like during that moment, part of what's really strange about this book is like people's economic situations have changed and yet they are fully unwilling to actually grapple with their own shame or fear of not being middle class or like not being comfortable. Like in the school setting, it's totally presumed, even though all of this evidence is coming out, that everyone is still going to be fine enough to participate. And Ruthie raising her hand and saying, like, of course, like the right thing to do is to give food to these people. Kit and Sterling and others, and possibly Roger, who really knows, are like barely scraping by. And I think that's why Roger's commentary that like the Puritans or the Pilgrims are like flush with excess and that's why they're helping the Indigenous people is like, yes, and it's happening again. Like this delusional break with reality is happening over and over. Like his exceptionalist read of that meal, it's like, babe, we're repeating it with the food drive.
Yeah,
like you guys don't have food.
it's insane. Like there's some real delusional stuff going down in this classroom that's like probably coming from the parents, but it does really echo to me the Josefina book where she breaks the ceramic and is like, shame, shame, shame. And we see how she deals with shame. And I feel like this entire book is like, how do white middle class people in Cincinnati in 1934 deal with shame? Like feeling shame for structural issues outside of their control for which they feel personally responsible. And whose job is it to help them, basically? And no one is dealing with this in it feels like no one's really dealing with this in a healthy way. Like Roger's calling them bums in the next like line of that scene. And then Ruthie is like, no, we should feel sorry for them. It's not their fault. And she's kind of coming with like more upper middle class pity as benevolence or like philanthropy. And it's like everyone's response is not great. Like Kit goes straight to a place of rage, which I can understand. It's like she's not a Leo, but she could be like very passionate. More important that people know she's not married to Sterling, which is a thing Roger keeps saying. It's just like, how do you negotiate shame? Like, what is the appropriate as a family, as a community? And I don't think anyone here really has the answer. I mean, we get to a place of mutual aid and support, which is really good. But in this moment with these kids, like, where is the teacher? He doesn't really play an effective role here. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable.
Well, his line is, I know most of us don't have much food to spare. And I think this is something that, like, again, is very much a reflection far more of a 1990s classroom than a 1930s classroom, because the back of the book is all about how teachers themselves had their pay cut, sometimes down to like a quarter of what it had been. That there were, huge fractures where people were saying that married women shouldn't even be allowed to teach because they have another income, and only single women should get to keep their jobs. So there's all these things going on. Teachers, panicking over losing their positions. And he's kind of coming in as like keeping up appearances and literally for the rest of the book, like carrying out this pageant. Right? Like, and the fact that Kit questions things and kind of acts out eliminates her from the pageant, which I think is kind of like a very poetic and like interesting comment. But they're always kind of talking in a very Samantha way about people experiencing poverty as something happening outside of the classroom. And the Peek into the Past tells us that that's not true. That classrooms were spaces in which poverty was very obvious. And there would have been places, like, it was striking to me that Dad is the one who eats in the middle of the day because that's when he can get food. There are places at this time already, and definitely going forward, where school is the place where people access food, right? Right. And that was already happening. That is not something that was invented. But I think the notion of there being shame around that, as opposed to it becoming a new normal in a lot of communities, I don't think that's a reflection of the 1930s. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still have people like freaking out over funded lunch programs at public schools. And so I kind of think it fits to that same like neoliberal model that you were talking about earlier. I found the Peek into the Past in this book like absolutely insane, and just like the focus on education was interesting and like makes sense for like a story that's allegedly based in school, when actually I think this is about the family.
Yeah.
And there's something like, there's a breadline photo, and it got me thinking about like how we represent the Great Depression through like photos of men in breadlines and like what we're supposed to do with that. And I just kind of feel like the situation of people reading this book, it's like if you were, say, a middle class reader in 2000 reading this book, it's like, are these photos then an archive, or are they also kind of an invitation to the same like looking down on people to feel better about yourself that like Ruthie and others are doing in the book, in this like meta way of like almost like, I don't know, like an atrocity Olympics or something?
Well, I think part of where we still live in the world that gave us this book is poverty in our culture is, to be represented or to be seen is supposed to be a certain thing, right? It's supposed to be as obvious and legible as the breadline. It's striking that the dad is basically not eating at the breakfast and no one is questioning, or, right? Like there's all these other things. We don't actually know what's going on with Sterling. We also don't know that he's not small for any other reason than they haven't had enough food to eat for years. Like we don't actually know. And I think something about the breadline is like, it's iconic. It's a visual that people can immediately grapple with. And today, I know where I live, food kitchens tend to be hidden. They tend to be big warehouses that make it so that people don't need to have to see it, or cards are disguised in a certain way so people can access food or supplies. But I think part of what's happening in the Peek into the Past is they're talking about classrooms as spaces where teachers are trying their absolute best, just like they do now, to make children feel valued, to keep up pageants, to keep up things that matter, but they themselves are having like to deal with poverty. And I think having the teacher sort of like let these kids like riff and go off on what they think about poor people, again, is like very much a moment from our world when most educators are forced to live at a poverty line.
Right.
And he's like, oh, yeah, interesting, right? As if like he's not like all of these people are talking about this thing as an other, as if it is not actually part of their experience. And I do think part of that is like an American girlification thing of like everyone still looks clean. Everyone still looks like they have everything they need. There's still new outfits for school. And I'm curious like where we're going to go with that with the family, because the winter of 1932, which is coming, is like the worst part besides 1938. It's like the worst part. So I hear what you're saying. And I think part of it is this dissonance of, well, poverty only looks this one way. And so because she has an outfit for school, she's not poor.
Yeah, it's kind of like a passing, like an economic passing the whole family is trying to participate in. And they're even doing it with each other. Like the dad is passing with his daughter, like, oh no, I'm not like going to a soup kitchen in the middle of the day and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, I think it's also just interesting, like thinking about cleanliness, like the Federal Writers Project, which starts in 1936, which is one of the programs designed to kind of like put people, air quotes, put people back to work to like air quotes earn aid, like one of FDR's programs. When they go into people's homes and do interviews about their experiences, something they frequently note is the cleanliness of the home and of the people in the home. I read one of a woman who lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut, just kind of randomly, and they were really like negatively describing her outfit, that she was dirty, that her apartment was dirty, and she had two like 3 and 4-year-old sons, and like just really commenting on like her hygiene, like letting the boys like put their fingers in like cookie batter she was making, and like that was wrong, and like the curtains were dirty, and like we're supposed to draw something from this. And I think that put this book and its emphasis on cleanliness and, you know, well-meaning appearances, or like everything is fine with like the china out at breakfast and all of this. I think it really emphasizes why they must have thought that was so important.
If you flip through, and we'll post pictures, the Welcome to Kit's World book, one of the things that's like honestly kind of amazing and that is borne out throughout this book is the family is able to imagine new and additional schemes to make money because they have a huge house, right? Like they have a house that can accommodate basically double the amount of people from what had been living there like 6 months ago, because they can think about converting a sleeping porch because they have one. And there's a layout of Kit's house in that book that shows like all the different things people are doing with it. I'm like, this is basically like a mansion, right? Like this is,
oh my God.
But when you think of all of the people in the house, and even when you think of like all of what she is able to do with the attic, yes, she has problems. The water is coming through. Kit is still able to like live in this very large house. And I found the conversation on page 50 where she basically confronts her dad, right? Just this moment of like absolute shock and terror upon learning that her father is receiving bread at the soup kitchen, and she is the one to actually hand it over to him. And she asks dad at home, when they're kind of like reeling from this experience, are we really that poor? And it's almost a whisper, we're told. Yes, we are, but I didn't want any of you to know. And I'm like thinking again about the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Howard, the relationship between Kit's dad and mom. And it's like, is this because it's from the point of view of a child that no one is talking about money? Or is this actually a comment on something bigger, that essentially everyone in this book is kidding themselves or someone else about money?
Yeah. you kind of have to wonder if, like, as a survival tactic, they're just kind of like disassociating, or like, well, like, it's not as bad as we think it is, or, you know, like, is there communication between the members of this family? Like, that really hit me with, like, so we've kind of glossed over, there was a plot line at the school where Sterling makes, for their Thanksgiving pageant, like, they discover he's an amazing artist, and he, like, draws these turkeys for the pageant and painting them. There's a fight that ensues between Kit, Ruthie, Sterling, and Roger. Paint is spilled, and as a punishment, they have to go to the soup kitchen, which is where they have to bring the items they collect to the soup kitchen, which is where Kit stumbles on her dad. So after that, they're, like, thinking about using extra wood that Ruthie's family has lying around from a new construction project, which tells you something about what these people have money for.
Mafia? Oh.
And, okay, as a quick aside, when I was looking at photos, Al Capone funded a soup kitchen in Chicago in this period. So it's like, where is Sterling's dad?
Is there a dad?
What is he involved in?
Like, how high does the con go with the letter?
I mean, did he ever exist? Has anyone ever seen this guy? Mrs. Howard was like, Lammy.
I haven't.
We didn't get into that. She calls him Lammy multiple times.
I clocked the Lammy. I do think that he is a supporter of Mariah Carey even now.
Thank you.
I think Sterling outlives them all because he is a good person and a good artist, and I think they don't deserve him.
They don't. He's somewhere listening to I Still Believe, Mariah's cover. They really don't. I said to you off here, I was like, this child is 8 or 150. Like, he's an old soul. He is too pure for this world. He's so sweet. Such a sweetie pie. Like, but also heartbreaking. Like, he's parenting his parent. Like,
yeah.
Coming up with basically mail fraud schemes so that your mom will accept $20 that she definitely will know comes from you is so beyond. But also, it's like, this is what trauma looks like for kids, where it's like they have so much trauma that as adults they can't, it keeps coming back. Like, you know, I mentioned my grandmother. Like, my grandmother grew up very poor in the Depression and was poor before the Depression, as she would love to say to people. But basically, she was not poor as an adult or as an elderly person. But she was always in that mindset. Like, she was forever like, okay, I'm coming to your house with like a 10-roll paper towel thing I saw on a discount. Like, I have a coupon, I have this and that, like, scarcity mindset. And it's like, you can see how that would happen reading this book with these kids. It's like, this is not going to leave them.
Well, it might leave Ruthie, because I don't know that Ruthie's life has really changed.
No.
Ruthie's kind of like, okay, bummer, your dad. So
your dad.
Ruthie is a Samantha adjacent. She's like a Samantha son. And that's not a dig, but she is. Because Ruthie does recognize that she has more and that she has an opportunity to be of assistance, not just to Kit, but to her family. And I do think it's fascinating the way that the two of them pivot from thinking about their treehouse and essentially realizing that if they add to the family's real estate in that way, their mom might just rent it out. And they're like, okay, that's not going to work. But thinking that they could use that extra lumber to do multiple things, to enclose the sleeping porch, to add like even more space, but also to essentially hire her dad, to essentially give Kit's father a reason to work. And I think there is a very like Protestant ethic thing happening here, and that's not a compliment of like, dad will feel like he's totally worthless unless he is serving this family through work. Like, that is an unchecked assumption of this book, and I am not saying that just to be critical for its own sake, but I think that is baked into this so deeply.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where a lot of the shame comes from, is that, you know, your material situation is somehow linked to your behavior. And, you know, if you don't have work to give your life meaning or dignity, then like, what are you supposed to do? And maybe you should feel ashamed. And, you know, you can just see how toxic that is in sort of like the emotional dynamics of the family.
We also learned that Kit, in the spirit of Paramore, makes the Hard Times news. I love that song.
Oof.
And so she creates a series of wanted ads. And I do like about this, like the way that like children pick up on things in their culture, right? That Kit is aware of like what real newspapers have. So she makes these wanted ads and basically makes them pitch to the existing tenants or boarders, and then has wanted immediately, talented handyman, wanted neat and tidy lady to help with housework, and then wanted kids with wagon. She's like, we can all be involved. I do think this is, in a lot of ways, like a far more interesting plot line than like looking back when Molly was collecting scrap for the war effort, or like her kind of like half-baked efforts at like being useful. Kit honestly like always stays true to herself, but does things that genuinely lift other people up, like hiring Sterling to make the art, like keeping with Ruthie to do this, and also knowing that a huge part of the joy she shared with her father was handing him a paper she wrote for him, and that now that he doesn't go to work, she doesn't feel like she has anything to share. I think that was like an extremely sweet scene, and like truly like this author at her best. Like that was like a really awesome way to tie up this book.
Yeah, I think she's very good at like finding ways for the main character to feel empowered, and like they can make some meaningful difference in their family or somebody's life. And as you're saying, I think it's nicer to read, like, I mean, Molly was basically trying to take out Hitler one tap dance at a time. And look, like maybe she did that. But with Kit, it's like we've seen this really compelling, her creativity or imagination and her love of writing and storytelling. And I think it's a real gift to her that she gets to communicate all of these like loose ends being tied up at the end of the book. Like, Dad, we're going to hire you. Because also I'm like, what is the state of these people's marriage that we get to the end of the book and the mom is like, when Kit's like, here's my idea, like we hire Dad to use the wood to, insulate or build out the sleeping porch, we can board more people. And the mom is like, that's okay. But she was like, but here's the thing, Dad needs to be told, quote, in the right way. Or he won't feel like, he'll feel emasculated, he'll feel even more ashamed, like whatever. And so Kit's like, got it, Mom. And then she makes Hard Times the newspaper the next morning. But it's like, what's up with the mom that she's like, I'm going to deputize my 8-year-old or like whatever to like, is she just basically like, I think that this is what Kit needs right now to feel important, so I'm going to let her have this. And I think my husband will accept it more easily coming from her. Or is she like, I don't want to talk to my husband about this because, like, we can't even speak about money at this point?
I think it's a classic trope in American Girl books that mothers wield a ton of influence but have to be very careful with how they use their power. And they find it more like easy, or just like their fastest route to actually getting things done is having their children say it in a cute way. And I think there's always sort of an attempt to draw like a generational distinction. Like, Mom is old school and Mom isn't going to tell her husband what to do, but plucky Kit Kittredge can.
Right. It made me think about like Sleepless in Seattle and how the kid sends in the message as his dad to the radio show that starts the whole thing. And it's like, kids communicating with their parents in weird ways or pretending to be them. It's like, that is seemingly a trope. Like, the kids are the ones with the wisdom and they have to like pull the parents along.
Yes, that Kit is ultimately the one that is like holding this family together. That's why I did find that sort of write-up really funny, because Charlie is essentially irrelevant to this book. It doesn't really seem to matter. He made the headline.
He's what, in the first page, and then he's like in the last page. That's it.
Yeah, he's kind of getting Kit going in the morning because she's having a hard time adjusting. Like, I know that the next book is when stuff between Ruthie and Kit gets very real because their Christmases are going to be different. I will say, I think this is the first time that we've explicitly had an American Girl whose fortunes have gone down. Like, not just that life has gotten harder, but in like a very explicit way, because Caroline, her life is kind of on the skids.
I can't wait for American Girl 2008. I mean, that's another declension narrative where it's like, I thought it was all NSYNC concerts and, Disney Channel. And then,
Dad, how was work at Enron? Well, bad news. No, I was reading a timeline of finances in the year 2000 and in the year 1999. I do think part of what was driving this interest in the Depression was this notion that so many people were experiencing prosperity in the 1990s, but it was, and it has been always, but it was becoming so disparate, right? Well, who's really benefiting from the tech and the .com boom? And 2000 is when Bill Gates kind of like moves over within Microsoft. There's all these like huge things happening in the tech world and all these anxieties. And I think part of the allure for someone to buy a Kit Kittredge then would be to say, like, well, remember when people were like, didn't even have enough for oatmeal in the morning? I think it's trying to draw a distinction as if poverty only looks like one thing. I will also note one of my favorite books of all time was made into a film with Natalie Portman when this came out, which is Home is Where the Heart Is. I love that story.
Wow.
If people want to talk about it with me, they should reach out. I read that book on the bus in middle school and I was like, I'm changed. Could I live in a Walmart? No.
I mean, if we had to, I think we probably could. I was disappointed by that movie because I didn't realize Stockard Channing was only going to be in it in a limited amount. Like, I wanted more Stockard.
Like, I read that book as if I needed to know how to live in a Walmart.
I mean, who's to say we don't need to know that? Like, it hasn't been demonstrated to me yet by adult life that isn't a useful survival skill just to have in your back pocket. No. But, I mean, Natalie Portman, like, you really did something with that movie.
She did.
You did.
She's still.
I saw her. She was doing an interview with Ashton Kutcher, both on running on treadmills for what's the spinning company?
Oh, Peloton?
Yeah. They do treadmills as well, which I think they had a big lawsuit, but apparently they're powering through that. And they were interviewing each other about how they both basically made the same movie, like No Strings Attached, and I forgot what the other one was. And I was like, how is celebrity reduced to this? Like, you went from Where the Heart Is, many different things, even your Jackie biopic, whatever. Now you're running on a treadmill being interviewed and interviewing Ashton Kutcher. Like, how do we get here? Like, what's happening?
Probably to quote Kit Kittredge, you would do it too for a check.
I don't know, like running just to run. I'm like, if somebody said to me, look, Mary, let's get out of here. We're going to run possibly 1 mile. There is a Dairy Queen at the end of this and we're Ubering home. I would be like, great, thank you. I'm with you. Someday if I organize a fun run, it will be in that format where it's like, we just know this is one way. Then there's a treat at the end and you can walk home. You can take an Uber, no judgments. That's my ideal setup.
I want to say shout out to our listeners who, who are overlapping, who also love Peloton. We have people on our Discord who are Peloton users avidly. And so they talk about American Girl and they coordinate rides with each other. Mary, if people want to get in on that or they want to talk about Claudie or they want to join one of our watch-alongs or they want to hear us talk about other kinds of books like Ancestor Trouble or Stone Words, how do people do that?
So you would just go to the link on our website or on our socials to our Patreon and sign up, and it's only $3 a month. We call it Duncan Shiro level. There's only one level, and we say that's Tobias Duncan every month, but it's like those prices have gone up at Duncan, but we're still keeping it the same. And for $3 a month, you can get into all kinds of conversations. Like, we've had great convos about all kinds of pop culture things. People have been talking about the whole Try Guy thing, which I didn't really understand. I don't like them, but I do love the Scandal. So I've learned a lot. That was great. We might have a Taylor Swift kind of PowerPoint party in advance of her Midnight's release or around then. So we might have people apply to give PowerPoints on what they feel are important information, because some people came out of the woodwork and very bravely and proud of them said, I don't know anything about Taylor Swift, but I want to. So we're doing something with that, but we're going to watch Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, a classic. We're going to watch The Addams Family from 1990. We have a lot going on there. So please join us on Patreon. It is very fun. I was going to say something else about Patreon. Oh, thank you to the listeners one listener in particular, and I can't remember your handle right now. We have a genealogy channel, and she put a link in there to StoryCorps, to instructions to interview members of your family, because I talked about my grandmother last episode, and she's kind of doing this really cool project of interviewing her own grandmother and other relatives, and wanted to invite other people on that journey if they're interested. So that's all on the genealogy channel. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us on another episode of our show. Again, we're so excited about this new change, and thanks to everyone who helps us spread the word about it and continues to support us here. If you want to get in touch, please find us on Instagram at Dolls of Our Lives Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Dolls Lives Pod. You can find us at Dolls of Our Lives Podcast on Facebook, and also email us at dollsofourlivespod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, and thanks to all of you already doing so, we have such a great time in our Discord community and in watch-alongs, and you get an extra episode each month on something that we deem to be within the world of our show. You can find us at patreon.com/dollsofourlivespod. And you'll find us soon on our new website, dollsofourlivespod.com. So please check us out there for all kinds of supplemental resources, including some great guides by our intern, Anna Lee. Last but not least, I want to dedicate this show to Angela Lansbury. When we recorded, she was very much still with us, and I, just delight in her, and Murder, She Wrote is my favorite TV show, as you may know. So I'm particularly hit hard by her loss. I just think she was such an incredible talent, and just want to encourage everyone to check out, something she made, whether it's Gaslight, Murder, She Wrote, or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, a classic from my childhood. Is she Kit grown up? Did Jessica Fletcher emerge from Cincinnati, Ohio, move to Cabot Cove in her retirement, change her name, and become a mystery writer? I don't know, but I would love to hear from you about this. So if you want to get in touch with Allison and I, please find Allison at Allison Horrocks on Instagram or Twitter. You can find me at Mimi Mahoney on Instagram or at Mary Mahoney123 on Twitter, although you're more likely to hear from me on Instagram. But please check out our new socials. Thanks again for your supporting our show, and we're so excited to see you on our next episode, our 100th episode. So see you real soon. Bye.
Thank you.